Welcome to the Forging Honor podcast. I'm Jonathan George.
And I'm Benjamin Jones. Here at Forging Honor, we explore what it means to live as Christian men. Along the way, we'll be doing challenges, building habits and character through action.
In this episode, we do something a little bit different. I get put in the hot seat. Banjo asks me questions as if he's interviewing me, and we talk all about technology, smartphones, various things you can do to adjust your habits around smartphones, as well as the direction that we are headed in. All right, it is challenge check-in time. As a reminder, challenges last for 6 weeks. That's a total of 42 days. They are simple daily tasks to grow us as Christian men. The current challenge is to turn your phone completely off for 1 hour every day. Banjo, how have you done this last week since we introduced this challenge?
So far, so good. One major adjustment that I've made this last week, I made a lot of adjustments this week just in terms of kind of stage of life stuff. But another adjustment has been I've moved out of the 5-day measuring system into the 7-day measuring system.
Look at you go.
I've finally made that switch in my head. So that's been big. And on the news scale, I'm 5 out of 7. So have had a couple days where the phone was on the whole day. But for the most part have been on a good routine with that. I had a couple of kind of crazy situations that helped me in the challenge. I had one day where close to where we lived, a tornado touched down actually and knocked out power for a whole day. So I wasn't even able to charge my phone at a certain point. So I was like, "Wow, this is great! I'm already one step ahead on the challenge."
It's good. It'll be fine.
Yeah, that's something we could talk about at some point. I think though, it was really an eerie experience to be without power for 24 hours.
Completely without power? Yeah, that's...
Completely without power. And especially because my wife was gone. She was at a youth conference that week. So it was just me in the house and we were moving out of our apartment. So it was just me and about 45 boxes in our tiny apartment with no power. And I was just about losing my mind. And so I was trying to figure out, like, what does this say about our dependency on technology and entertainment and all this stuff. And in the meantime, just trying to stay cool in the 90-degree heat wave we were having at the same time. Anyway, JJ, how was your week? Did you get the phones?
Yes.
Phones
so
off?
So far, so good. So technically, according to the rules of the challenge, I'm at 6 out of 7. Actually, it was funny. The very first day of this challenge, I woke up early to go to a Bible study and just accidentally left my phone at home. So I left it at home for 2 hours. So it wasn't off, but I just ended up counting that because I wasn't on my device.
That counts. I think that counts.
It's technically 6 out of 7, but 7 out of 7 in terms of I was away from my phone for the full hour. And I've enjoyed it. It's been different times of the day, sometimes in the morning. Oftentimes I'll do it during when I first log on to work. The first hour or so, somewhere in there, I'll turn it off. And I could knock out a lot of work in that first hour. And that's been really good for me. Other times, I did it on an evening towards the end of last week, and that was good because I just ended up reading. I read Bridge to Terabithia for the first time in like a decade. That's a short, easy read. I'll admit I teared up a little bit. That was the first book that ever made me cry. Like I read that as a pretty little kid. I hadn't read it since.
The first book that ever made me cry, tangent, Martin the Warrior in the Redwall series.
Yes, that one can.
That's a heartbreaker. That's a good one.
Oh, yeah. When you read it as a little, elementary schooler, oh man, those are great books. At any rate, what have you filled your time with thus far?
That's a good question. Well, like I said, my week has been kind of strange. I'm moving into a new apartment. I'm actually, folks can't see. I guess we're not recording the video, but I'm in a new spot. I've got new bookshelves around me, and so a lot of my days have been unpacking big corrugated boxes, which has been good. We're talking a lot about the monotasking we're trying to do a little bit more of.
Right, exactly.
Trying to spend more time with my wife and just being present in those conversations. making dinner in the kitchen. Lately, she's been making dinner, and the last couple of days, I've been reading a book to her while she cooks, and that's been very nice. I've kind of enjoyed that.
Don't let my wife hear
Going
that.
on
Like that's just that's a standard that not all of us can live up to there, Banjo.
we're not at a standard here. It was 2 days. For 2 days, and we're very happy that we've made it 2 days. So it's been those kinds of things. Having the one day where there was no power was really strange. I thought I was going to be like, well, I'm going to just knock out a book, every 45 minutes.
Right. Just all this reading.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have anything else to do, but instead it was really kind of a bizarre experience to have one day where there was just no technology that kind of worked. I traveled outside of the house and went to a coffee shop and found some time to get away, but still it was like when these things don't work, I almost wasn't sure what to fill my time with, so I'm trying to take that experience a little bit and compare it to how is this phone challenge going. And I have some stuff we can talk about later with that, but how about for you? How are you feeling the hour? I think it's the hour.
Yeah. Like I said, most of it has been work. And then a couple times it's been reading. One time it was just go outside and do some yard work, and that felt good as well. Just move around a little more. So yeah, I've enjoyed this so far. It's been good.
Good. Well, I wanted to do something a little bit different today. JJ and I, we normally we love to have on people to interview and talk to, get some ideas about whatever the challenges that we're going through. And this week, JJ was asking me, if I had found anybody who we wanted to talk to, or was there anyone in particular that I was interested in getting their opinion on our challenge. And I told JJ, look, if you weren't part of the podcast, you would be the first person that I would be calling to talk about this challenge. Because when I think about just the people in my life who know a lot about technology, spend a lot of time thinking about technology and philosophizing and theologizing about tech, JJ is the first person that comes to mind. So I wanted to do something a little bit different today, and instead of having on a guest to interview, I wanted to actually interview kind of the expert in our midst, which is JJ. So JJ, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Very excited
so
to
happy
have
to
you
be
on.
here. So excited.
So I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. One, you're in the computer science world. You chose computer science as your major in college. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
And how did you come to that world? What is it about that world that was interesting to you? What's your, because in my mind, JJ, you are like the man between two worlds. You have this very like Tolkien-esque side to you, this very like woodsman, outdoorsy, I'm going to go out and do things out in nature. But at the same time, you have this very technologically minded, very much I'm going to figure out how this thing works brain. And how did you choose that major in the science world?
How did I meld the two? Well, let's go all the way back a good ways. There's some history here.
I was born in the backwoods of Tennessee.
Actually, Colorado, in a library without power. No. I'm not joking about two of those things.
You have to figure out, listener, which is which.
But there, yes, and so we don't have to go back quite that far. However, yes, to establish myself as, why should you even care about what I have to say with technology? Because I haven't written any books on the subject, but I've definitely produced a large amount of written material on the subject. Kind of started out, my fascination with technology started around the same time that I started reading. So you see that there's a blend very early on. My father has been in the music world, so he had some of the early Mac computers and some cool gadgets for me to mess with. Loved that stuff. And at the same time, I was loving to read. So I had these two passions, these two hobbies for a long time. And then I was looking through some old papers the other day and found, like, early high school, I said, we had to take a class on, it was like a career planning class of some sort. And one of the pieces of that was like lay out like where you might be in 5 years or 10 years and kind of an idea for your life. And one of the things I put down was that I would get a degree in computer science. So at that point I had already decided. And then for whatever reason, when I decided to go to Covenant, I went into engineering. I thought, well, electrical engineering is going to be close, and it has the word engineer in it. I was not a fit for engineering. There's way too much math involved and way too much time required, and I wanted to run.
Break that down for us a little bit. So in my literature world head, I hear engineering.
Yep.
I gravitate more towards like we're going to build a bridge.
Right.
And computer engineering, I guess, is building the same concept, but build a program. What's
so
what really is the difference?
There are a couple different types of quote unquote computer engineering. You have kind of your hardware engineers and your software engineers, and a lot of what those guys do is actually building the hardware that you're using, fitting everything together inside your computer, making sure you've got exactly what you need there. And then you've got your software engineers that are, that's kind of a term that gets thrown onto some people when they're not really a software engineer. I've been called a software engineer. I would not call myself a software engineer, but they're like the true software engineers. They're the guys that are at the base level, programming your computer, your operating systems, the things that like you and I don't have the tools to do necessarily. So that gets to be pretty heady stuff. There's a lot like at that really lower level where the hardware meets the software. It's really fascinating stuff. It just wasn't the fit for me. So I went the computer science route. So after freshman year, I transitioned to computer science. So my prophecy came true that I wrote down in high school. And that was the right choice for me. And computer science, it's looking more at, it's in the name, science. It's a approach to programming, writing code, understanding problems in a manner that allows you to, one, turn it into code, and then two, actually solve the problem for a user. So you're not just a code monkey. You're not just saying, all right, we're programming this thing, go code it. It's a little more higher level on the problem solving front. So it's halfway between regular developer and software engineer.
And code, is it just like it is in the Matrix? Is it zeros and
ones?
No,
nothing like that. There are zeros and ones. That can be fun to mess with. The basic level. Most of what we do, at least these days, is actually very simple in terms of ease of reading the code or ease of developing the code. Just because programming languages have come a long way in terms of how human readable they are, or even how interactive they are. There's a lot of low code solutions, they call them now. So what that looks like is, you can even tell an AI, hey, generate this thing for me, and it can write code for you. And some of them are decent, not all of them. A lot of them are terrible. A lot of them have bad bugs introduced. But when it comes to what I'm actually doing, because if an AI can write the code now, you don't need as many developers. But someone still has to come up with what order is this going to happen, and what algorithms are we going to use? How are we actually solving this problem? So you're looking at it almost from a architectural standpoint, like how is it all going to fit together? If you're thinking about like you're building a building, there are companies out there that are trying to 3D print buildings and do away with the actual builders. Someone still has to tell it what to do, has to tell that 3D printer what to do. So like in that analogy, I'm the person telling that printer what to do. And so that's the direction a lot of things are heading.
Is it also kind of, to make another analogy, basically it's like there are, the AI is capable of building Lego bricks, but you're the one who's capable of like putting together the Lego set. Is that basically
that's one way of putting
job?
It? And I could even write out all the instructions, hand the instructions to the AI, and it might do that. But there has to be original thought somewhere along the line. So a good computer scientist, what they're going to do is they're going to sit down and say, all right, what's going to be the most efficient way to solve this particular computer problem? How are we going to link this to other computers? How are we going to integrate it is the term that's used, integrations and APIs. How are we going to improve it over time, maintain it? Where is it going to be stored? How is it going to be run? So there's all these questions that have to be answered that you can tell a developer or you can tell AI to go do, but someone has to come up with that. So that's a lot of the space I sit in now.
So let's use that as a springboard a little bit. So what I'm hearing from you there is that this is a lot of it's science, it's thinking, it's hard work. You're problem solving.
Yep.
It sounds like there's a lot of gray matter being used, a lot of brain at work. Most of what I think of when I get in a grumpy old man mood about technology is, well, kids don't have to think anymore. Because technology is doing all the thinking for them. When I get anxious and worked up and crotchety about AI,
Banjo is such a crotchety person. I think Banjo, and that's what I think. No,
people are. Yeah, I think what is gonna. What are we gonna think about in the future? How are we gonna be able to think? But it sounds like what you're talking about is pushing thinking. So I guess my question is. How is it that the building of these things is requiring so much thought? And is it really the case that it's pulling thought out of our brains, or am I thinking about this the wrong way?
I think to answer that, we can go back to your first question, which was how do I kind of blend the two parts of myself? Because it seems to me that's kind of what you're getting at. You don't want to lose some of the artistic, the literary, and the philosophy that has to happen that truly makes us human, right? The creativity really is what you're getting at, is what it sounds like, right?
Partially, but also the creativity in that problem solving as well. But yeah, creativity. Okay. Let's go with that.
So if we go with creativity, or if we at least, the reason I go with creativity is because for me, the place where that blends, actually first started in a high school paper I wrote, which was a very idealist paper, and I don't know how much of it is worth reading today, but I titled it Tolkien and Technology, A Philosophy of Design. So it was actually exploring technology from a perspective of someone who did not like the machine, as he put it, and that would be in quotes and in caps, the machine. And so his approach, Tolkien's approach, and what he ends up talking about with technology has really influenced how I approach that and how I want to be creative with it and how I want to think about technology. Do I successfully act in those ways all the time? No. But there's definitely, there's a something to shoot for here. So where I bring that in with Tolkien, the reason I do that is because he is all about being a sub-creator, right? We've been created by God. And so we are, as he puts it, sub-creators. Now, we can't create something out of nothing, but we have been given building blocks that God has given us, whether it's in the arts, in language, in the physical world around us, to create art and to create tools that are useful for the creation of that art and the expression of that art. Now, I would not consider myself to be much of an artist, but I definitely am a sub-creator of sorts, because I work with these tools that I've been given. So the warning that Tolkien gives us is to not become infatuated with these tools, to not become infatuated with the art in its own right? It should always be pointing back to God. So you see it. He explicitly uses the example of the elves creating the rings, how depending on the person and depending on the power of whichever ring they have in the story of Lord of the Rings, they can become obsessed with the ring and the power that it brings, rather than using it for good. So how do we interact with that is kind of the question I think about with technology. Now, obviously, Tolkien did not like allegories. He wasn't necessarily using the rings as an allegory for technology.
Not a fan. Not a fan of the allegories was Tolkien.
No, he was not. But he did admit that a number of literary devices he uses could be substituted for various real-world examples. And so while it's not an allegory, it might be some kind of type or representation. And sure. I'm not going to get into the literary swamp there and try to parse all that out for everybody because that's not my forte.
I won't push us there either. I'll keep us out of that.
At any rate, so getting back to okay, how do we maintain creativity within this world? How do we maintain and push that thought? The thing that how do we push kind of the thing that makes us human a little bit, right? Um, well, I think it's just that it's learning to be sub creators, and it's learning rather than simply consuming the technology or becoming infatuated with the technology. We have to parse out, all right, is this good? Is this bad? Truly call it good or bad, depending on what it is. And then use the good for God's glory. And we can get into some of the details on that, but is that starting to answer that question?
Yeah. Well, let's get into some of the details. I mean, we're talking about the phone here. I think smartphones, iPhones in particular. Maybe what are some? Let's state the obvious. Let's get the elephant out of the room or into the room, I guess,
Sure.
however you want to put it. But what are some of the? What are some of the ways that our phones can be used for creativity? When you look at a phone, are you going, "Oh my gosh, that's there's the end of Western civilization as we know it," or are you saying, "Oh, look at this. There's this tool for creation." What are maybe the two sides of the bridge we can fall off of here?
Well, let's think about there's two things going on with any piece of technology. There's how was it designed? What's the purpose it was designed for? And then how do you actually use it, right? If something is designed a certain way, say the iPhone, to be incredibly ergonomic, to feel good in your hand, to look good, you're going to want to pick it up more. So it's designed to be picked up, held, used, turned on, looked at, interacted with. Certain apps are designed to be addictive. Right? The when you pull down on social media and there's a little twirly thing at the top that makes you feel like, oh, more is loading, right?
It's the slot machine in a casino kind of a feeling.
Well, that came from a guy who used to work at casinos, and that's where that idea came from. Can't remember if it was one of his books or if he actually proposed the idea. At any rate, point being, some devices, some applications have been intentionally designed in such a way that you want to go to them and you want to behold them. You want to, and the worst way of putting it might be they become our little personal gods, our little idols, right? Which I think some people take it that far. I'm not sure everybody does, but some people do.
Well, you want to behold and you want to be held by the phone at the same time.
Right.
And I think we mentioned this earlier, thinking about Psalm 115, thinking about they have eyes but do not see, ears but do not hear, mouths but do not taste. But that's for a different time. So anyway, sorry.
So that's kind of the dark side of it. But you could also look at it as, well, it's been the phone has been designed as a piece of art, right? It's got beautiful glass on it, this beautiful crystal. It's got very
Would
nice
you say
a
piece of art?
Well, I'm not sure
I'm
not sure if I personally would go so far as art, but I know some people that have in terms of, it's the perfect blend of form and function, right? They talk about it as this beautiful designing achievement, which granted it is.
Well, I was going to ask, I mean, the way that you were talking about computer programming, you were saying, I'm not really creative. You wouldn't describe yourself as creative, but that's the process of designing computer code sounds like a creative process.
There is definitely a creative process. I won't deny that.
Why don't we think of it in terms of art? Like, why is it just because of it's utilitarian?
Somewhat, yeah. It's somewhat utilitarian, somewhat pragmatic. Because at the end of the day, right, you're going to develop not just because, it creates this beautiful thing, right? I'm not, when I develop a piece of code, most of the time I'm doing it to improve a client's process or to help a client solve a problem, right? It's not to create a piece of art that I put on my wall or to write some poetry that people read and feel some emotion wells up inside of them when they read it, right?
Right.
So that's part of the purpose behind it question. Art can be like one of the distinguishing factors. What makes art is somebody created it as art, right?
That's its telos,
right? And that's one of the things I think that people don't like or don't get about a lot of modern art. They're like, that's just a normal everyday thing. Like nobody created that as art, right? Have you seen the toilet that somebody put up in a museum?
Yeah.
Like, and people look at that, and some people are either like, wow, it's amazing. This guy took something normal And he said it's art, not that makes it art. And other people are like, that doesn't make it art. Like there's questions there, right? There's a question of philosophy
Right.
there. And I think the same thing happens with some code. Because I would definitely say that some code is more beautiful than other code, but that's because of how it accomplishes what it accomplishes, right? A code that is elegantly written in very few lines and takes very little memory. Oh, that's beautiful. Code
Right.
that is bloated, way too much information in there, fragments of lines that you're like, I don't know what's going on here. Hard to read. You don't like that. It's ugly. But only a
So
developer would really care about some of that. So it's why
well, actually, let me push that a little bit. Then I'm thinking about our phones.
sure.
Is a phone then? It's in theory, it's kind of a playground for us.
Right.
There's supposed to be this kind of like almost a sandbox type feel,
Yep.
right? I'm thinking, especially with the smartphone or an iPhone, that is built into it. There's supposed to be an element of creativity built into it, and you're talking about, well, this line of code is beautiful because it's efficient, it's sleek, it's designed, it's doing what it's supposed to do. I'm wondering, I guess, is the problem that we're not treating our phones this way? In other words, like we just accept the phone as an object given to us, but are we not taking? Do we need to take more ownership over our phones? I guess rather than put them in a box.
Short answer.
Does that question make
Yes.
sense?
I mean, yes, we can dig
What does
into
that? What does that
what
look
that
like?
is and why that is. I think a huge piece of it is, what is it you're trying to accomplish? That's the second part of it. So it's been designed a certain way. This gets into the second
Yeah.
question of how are you using it? If someone handed you a hammer and you went and tried to dig a hole with it, they'd look at you like you were crazy because
Right.
that's the wrong tool for the job. And I think that is a common mistake in the realm of technology where we try to shoehorn the wrong job in for this tool. So we try to shoehorn quality communication and quality social interaction into a tool that wasn't meant for that. We try to shoehorn, let's put every list on here, or let's put every book on here, every piece of information on here. And sometimes the tool's not quite meant for that. One of the beautiful things, one of the interesting things I've enjoyed seeing is technologies that exist apart from the smartphone that are technology that are purpose built. So, for example, there's a company out there, I can't remember the name. You can look them up. It's a calendar device. So it's a large, look kind of like a large iPad. It's like an e-ink display of your calendar. So it goes like in your kitchen or in your living room, wherever the whole family can see it. You can interact with it like it's a device, but it's for calendar only. So it's your family calendar on a device. So it eliminates the need for multiple calendars, multiple papers, etc. It syncs with your phone calendar, but there's a central place for the whole family to see it. That's such a neat idea. I think that's the coolest thing. You also see it with,
Yeah.
I appreciated the direction the Kindle was going until they introduced non-e-ink displays. Like the whole point was it looked like a page out of a book, right? It didn't need to
Right.
look like a device. So seeing purpose-built technologies, that matters to me, I think, because it's a lot harder to shoehorn in the wrong use. So that's kind of a long-winded way of saying what, like, instead of a Swiss Army knife approach, let's use specificity with our tools.
Well, let's get practical for a second then. If, young fella is listening to the show and is thinking, well, how do I figure out how to make my phone into a tool that works for me? How do I figure out what this tool is for?
Right.
How would you advise somebody to go about figuring out how to get their phone to be a tool for them rather than a stumbling block?
Absolutely. Well, think about if your phone were taken out of your day-to-day. So I've done this exercise. Write down everything that you would truly have to get an analog equivalent for. So that might be, okay, if I got rid of my phone, I need to purchase physical notepad for to-do notes or something like that. Or I need to purchase a physical calendar. I would need to start writing letters to people because I no longer have text or something, or I have to drive and talk to them. Or maybe I need a home phone. That's on the edge of analog in some ways these days. But just go through, write down a list of everything you would actually have to purchase to replace the phone. So when we did this for me and my wife, it was like, all right, we need a quality GPS, quality camera, quality calendar system. And some of those things, I actually like having the analog equivalent. I have used a paper calendar for over a year now, and I've used one off and on for most of my life. I've tried to do the full digital, and I've never made it full digital for more than a year. It just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Some people like that. So once you have that list of here's everything I truly would need to replace in order to be able to function properly in society, and you'll see it's quite a long list in some ways, especially as lots of people have QR things up now, and like you would need some way to connect with those. And there are little devices that do that, and or maybe you need a way to interact with, like, you have a bunch of your credit cards on your phone. Okay, so now you need to get your cards off your phone. Various things. Carry a bigger wallet. So once you have that list, you can say, okay, what is worth it to me to actually keep on the device, and what would be worth actually removing? So for me, one of the things I mentioned already was removing the calendar. I don't care to have the calendar on my phone. It just doesn't make sense. Email, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily belong on the phone. I have the email app on my phone in case I need to go find an attachment or something. But generally, I check my email on my computer. Right? I have a computer for this.
Right.
The same goes for social media. There's no reason to have social media on your phone, in my opinion. If you really feel the need to be attached to social media for whatever reason, for me, it's mostly for marketing purposes, for this show or for other projects that I'm doing. Well, I can publish all that through an app on my computer. I don't have to go doom scrolling on my phone in order to be interacting on social media. But there are other things that are very valuable to keep on your phone. I did not feel like dropping the expense or the amount of money it would take to replace the camera on my phone. That's just
right. That'd be a huge
at that price point to replace for at least an equivalent camera. I'm going to be spending a decent chunk of change. I already have an iPhone. Why would I spend that money? Right. So there are a couple things that it felt very worth it to me. So that's where I would start practically.
That's helpful. I like that idea of cutting out all, having all of this information, or this is a real look at what my phone does step by step. And then you get to just kind of decide, well, this makes sense to me. This works for me. And this doesn't. And I wonder, even looking at it, I was just looking through my phone the other day, and I was surprised at how many apps are just automatically installed onto my phone, and that I don't need.
If you're on an iPhone, you can remove most of those now.
Right. Yeah. Which most of the time, because I'm hardly ever tempted to wander into like GarageBand or something like that. That's usually not a huge. They're just still on there for me. Who knows? Maybe I'll get into some sound design.
It's always the what if that keeps an app on your phone. So here's a test. If you haven't opened an app in the last month, just go ahead and delete it and see if you have to re-download it at some point in the near future. If not, you probably didn't need it in the first place. Now there are some apps where I need them just often enough that I've kept them on my phone. Mostly it's a couple of travel apps. I have a booking app for flights. I have, Airbnb is on there, and a couple others that are very specific tools for those purposes. Usually because those also contain my travel passes or codes to unlock Airbnb doors or whatever. So I have a little subfolder on my phone that's just like travel and extra, and any app that I know there's a high likelihood of me needing as a specific tool, that goes in there. Otherwise, it gets deleted for the most part. And the rest of the apps on my phone are very purpose oriented.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let me flip the script. We're running short on time, so let me take the opposite approach. Let's say that I am an absolute Luddite. I preach on street corners that that iPhones are the mark of the
It's
devil.
gonna get you. Yeah.
It's going to destroy us all, and we're already approaching singularity. But I'm thinking, or I'm not really thinking. How would you talk me into? Why would you say, you know what? It actually is. This thing in and of itself is not bad. Maybe give it another shot. Why should I have reason to be optimistic about the
A
phone, about
smartphone
technology?
specifically.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
for the sake of our challenge, let's go smartphone.
To be completely honest, I'm not sure I would ever encourage someone that has managed to live a life without a smartphone up to this point to go get a smartphone,
Yeah,
which
that's
might not
fair.
be the answer you're looking for. Because the thing is, when when I look at my life, I think on the whole, probably would be better without the smartphone. There's very few things that I actually need my smartphone for. Most of them relate
Right.
to like partially because I've trimmed my smartphone down so much. At this point, it's almost entirely quick communication apps. So I don't know why there's so many. There's iMessage, there's Signal, there's Teams, there's Google, there's the Facebook Messenger. What all these different messaging apps. Those make up the majority of the apps on my phone at this point.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the only reason I still have a smartphone at the end of the day. Like that, and there's a couple of tools that I could replace. Those are the ones that I can't figure out how to replace exactly because if I switch to a dumb phone, which I've done a couple times, I have to start carrying a computer around or an iPad or something to have access to those apps. And
Right.
if the whole point is carry less, like I don't want to like that's the trade off I'm
It's
willing to make.
impractical.
But if you've managed to live your life up to this point without the need for those apps, I don't think there's a point in getting involved in that necessarily.
Well, let me ask a different question
Sure.
then, which is, what questions should I be asking? Another like, what's the? You spend a lot of time thinking about these things. You live in this world. You hear the conversations that happen. What's the blind spot that we're not getting? Either the danger of technology or the iPhone,
Hmm.
or social media or whatever it is, or what's the benefit that nobody's talking about? What's the thing that we're missing?
I think there are a couple benefits, and then there's kind of one blatant question that I would ask. There are definitely benefits to, my grandparents have smartphones, and it's great to be able to send them pictures of the grandkids and stuff. And there's communication
Yeah.
that probably wouldn't have happened otherwise, which speaks more to me as a poor grandson than than anything else. And if I had to pick a single benefit, it's the emergency capabilities. Like in terms of saving lives, some of the functionality that we have today, even just like it can sense when you fall. The iPhone now can, or your Apple Watch can tell, or like early signs of a heart attack. Like there's all kinds of cool features
Oh
that are
wow.
saving lives.
Yeah.
Or I mean Siri, which I got to be careful not to say the
Don't wake her up.
don't wake Siri up. Actually, I have my phone completely off right now, so we're in good shape. But Siri can call emergency services for you. Like there's in my mind, that is one of the best features that we have seen. I think the ability, if you use it properly, there is some really cool creative stuff people are doing in terms of pushing the boundaries with how we create art or how the type of technology that we're able to use. I think I'm very interested in blockchain technology, which is that's a buzzword right now. But that wouldn't happen apart from the tech that we have today. Like there's just there are some cool things going on, which kind of leads to what's the question you should be asking rather than how do we deal with these things that like the iPhone has been out for almost 2 decades now. We're coming close to 2 decades.
It's a long time.
Yeah. And the iPhone will probably be around for a while. Like smartphones aren't going anywhere anytime soon. But there are other technologies, and I think the future of technology as a presence in our lives without us having to pay direct attention to it. That's what's interesting to me. So the question would be, how are we going to move forward with technology, take the advantages, and leave behind the distractions? And I think
Do you have an answer?
I don't have a specific answer, but I think that we're going to see that in the world of wearables and side by side AI, that kind of thing.
Right.
So, like if you can imagine a world where you don't have to carry a brick in your pocket, but instead, maybe the device is in a contact lens or in your glasses or something like a wearable, which that kind of freaks me out because people could then track everything I see and all of my whereabouts. But
Right.
you might have other opportunities with the smart home integrations, and I'm very interested in, like, these have existed for a little while. Like, and one thing I want to get in my house are these smart light bulbs that light and dim with
Right.
daylight,
Yeah.
so it starts to mimic a proper circadian rhythm. And just some of the ways that people are using technology, not to pay attention to the technology, but rather to bring us kind of back into where we are at the time, to monotask, as we've been talking about for a while, to have that monofocus.
So in other words, what you're saying is we're at a little bit of maybe a unique time in history where we're hyper focused on the technology, whereas in the past, technology has been maybe moving at a pace with societal change that it's been under the radar or off to the side. But now that technological change is so huge, so enormous, that's so seismic that it's all anybody can talk about.
Right.
And you're saying the next step is really for us to what happens once this becomes normal is really the question.
And I think some people think it is normal. It's not. We're still moving at a crazy pace. We're still figuring a lot of this out. I mean, think about it this way. Like, when they first invented the steam engine, they were putting steam engines in everything. We had steam engine cars. Like, we don't have those anymore today.
Yeah.
But the technology that was utilized in the steam engine of a pressure system to create energy, that technology is all around us to this day. We just, it no longer, we don't notice it. And I think that's going to start to happen. I think we're going to see fewer and fewer screens, and a return to...
Really?
Yes, because I think we're going to see a return to screens in their proper place, like real movie experiences, and fewer smaller screens. Because that's, like, a general rule of thumb is that the smaller the screen, the more control it has over you. So
that's fascinating.
So I think what we're going to see is, at least for the conscientious, like, because there's always kind of the two sides of this, right? You always have the effort being dumped into kind of keeping a certain set of people addicted or in a loop, right? That happens with opioids, right? That was happening, and a lot of lawsuits have occurred since then. At the same time, there were proper uses for some of those drugs that were put out. So there's always kind of the duality of a tool, and I think that's going to happen here. Is there's going to be, you might enter a home and go, I don't see any screens anywhere. Oh, because we have the TV set aside over here and we have proper movie experiences, and we don't really use screens I think we're going to start to see a lot of that. At least
we have
I
the
would
big
hope
screen in the basement.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's a refreshingly optimistic take, actually. I mean, everyone who listens to this show knows that I'm a tremendous movie nerd,
right? And
one of the big anxieties in movies right now is, like, people aren't going to the movie theaters, and partly that's because of the kinds of movies that have been on the big screens.
I mean, I've gone to a movie theater
lately
to see a movie I want to see, but they haven't been putting stuff out I want to see for a while.
Yeah, that's really the problem. By the way, if folks haven't checked it out yet, and if it's still around, The Fall Guy is very good and worth seeing in theaters. I'll toss that out there because I want to see people in movie theaters, so I'm going to say it.
There you go.
Anyway, but there's a lot of anxiety about that, and a lot of people are talking about how do we get people back in the theaters, especially when things like what do you call it, the Apple Vision Pro,
right?
Can create a theater experience at home. And so, there's a lot of, the sky is falling, but I like what you're saying, what you're positing about we're going to see them in their proper place. That I would like to see that world. That would be good.
I like tech in its proper place. And for me, it's as a helper rather than as a hindrance or distraction. So, like, I mean, people think I'm all down and out about video games, for example. I'm not. I think mobile games are one of the worst things ever to have happened. I think if you're going to game, do it on a system. Like that,
you like a PC or a PlayStation
on
or
a proper
like
system that you basically build have the tool or build the tool for its purpose is all I'm saying.
Right.
So like it's for the same
Don't
reason
confuse them.
why people, I think it's good to have a separate work machine from your personal machine for computers. Like I have a separate work computer, I have a separate personal computer, and not everyone needs a personal computer. Like that's just it, because at the end of the day, like there's even just a physical reality of how your brain interacts with those two objects. Like when you pull out your work laptop, or maybe you plug in at your workstation at work. If you work in a knowledge field or a creative field, you're doing that. Then your brain knows this is work. Don't ever do entertainment on your work machine. Don't ever do entertainment on those devices. Do entertainment on your entertainment devices. It does require more forethought, more planning, and not everyone can afford to do that. And that's fine. These aren't hard and fast rules. But I think the more that we use tools for their purpose, the more that we'll be able to live more focused lives.
I like that, and maybe that's a good place to wrap up this discussion
this
for
is
now.
fun. I like being in
this is
the chair sometimes.
Yeah, that's good as well. I've enjoyed it. I guess we'll see you here next time. So
Yes.
we're glad to have you on. Any last final thoughts? Any places people can hit you up for questions or comments, or books you think people should read, or movies?
Forging Honor is on the social media as much as I dislike social media. We're on there, so you can find information there. I've mentioned several books already last week, but I would reiterate a couple of them. Andy Crouch's The Tech Wise Family is really good, and Tony Reinke's 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You, phenomenal. There's a bunch of other tech ones. I actually, one that has influenced my thought that I really enjoyed, I can't remember the author right now. It might be sitting right here behind me, or it's over on my other bookshelf. Here it is. Yep. From the Garden to the City by John Dyer. This one I read in college, and it's a very biblical approach to a philosophy of technology and how we design. The subtitle is The Redeeming and Corrupting Power of Technology. And he does an excellent job just kind of doing an overview of what tech really is and how we interact with it, and some of the dangers, but also some of the benefits. So check that out.
Very good. Also, I this is just a kind of a fun one, but I recently read this week, while the lights were off, while the electricity was out of my house, there was one book I did finish, which was Don DeLillo's White Noise, which is a really interesting book kind of about life in modern America. And he has some really interesting things that he kind of looks at with technology. He's writing in, I want to say the 80s. So it's a little bit of a different vibe. Television, again, is kind of the main model there. But he's got some really interesting stuff to say about the way that we kind of imbibe culture through technology and the way that sets our rhythms. And it's definitely worth a read. Pretty fascinating. Very, very weird book, but I found it pretty engaging. So folks can check that out.
Very good.
Well, this has been fun.
This has been very enjoyable. So
Don't
as
worry,
a reminder,
folks, I will not be doing this next week. JJ will not be interviewing me about technology.
We might get to do that at some point about another subject. That would be fun. But yes, so as a reminder, these challenges, they last for 6 weeks. That's a total of 42 days. Simple daily tasks to grow us as men. This current challenge is to turn your phone completely off for 1 hour every day.
This has been the Forging Honor podcast. Music and production is by Elliot George. For more information about what we do or to learn how to get involved, visit our website at forginghonor.com. There you'll find information about our community, the Forge, and how to join other young men seeking to glorify God in thought, word, and deed. You'll also find blog articles, book recommendations, and more ways to grow as a Christian man.
If you enjoyed the show, please tell a friend or family member about Forging Honor. We would also appreciate it if you would take a moment to like and subscribe. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, a rating and review only takes a moment, and it goes a long way towards growing the Forging Honor community.
Thanks for taking the time with us today. We hope you'll take up the work alongside us and join us in the task of Forging Honor. We'll see you next time.